Chapter 51. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A few hours after Yi Fei subdued the cool leopard, the two came to the lake to take a short break. They had walked a long way, and Yi Fei was too tired to walk. Zhang Rui looked at the detector and found that they were about to reach the central area, so he took a short rest by the lake before setting off again. Along the way, after fighting with the cool leopard, he encountered many powerful elves on the road. Of course, all of them were dealt with by Zhang Rui, and Yi Fei just watched the battle from the side. After all, as long as his elves appeared, they would definitely be killed in seconds. How could they be as powerful as the Kabutosaurus, and it was also a quasi-god? Yi Fei was so envious, he was still fantasizing about when he could also get a quasi-god. When he went there, he would be very popular with girls, and it would be a tool for picking up girls. Zhang Rui fed the Kabutosaurus by the lake to let it recover its strength. After the battle just now, the level of the Kabutosaurus increased rapidly. Now it is level 40. Although it has not learned any new skills, its strength has greatly improved. The Kabutosaurus first ate the energy cubes that Zhang Rui fed it, and then ran to the lake to drink water, enjoying the short time. At this moment, the Kabutosaurus suddenly saw something on the lake and roared at Zhang Rui, who was eating on the side. Kabutosaurus, Kabutosaurus. Hearing the Kabutosaurus's call, Zhang Rui was stunned at first, but soon ran over. When Zhang Rui came to the lake, he saw a blue elf flying on the lake, and smiled at Zhang Rui. Zhang Rui quickly recognized what the elf in front of him was through the red gem on its body. Aknam. Because Zhang Rui's voice was very loud, Yi Fei, who was eating, immediately put down the instant noodles in his hand, ran over quickly, and asked Zhang Rui excitedly. Rui, what did you say just now? Did you say Aknam? This is a legendary elf, and you actually saw it. Yi Fei was shocked and immediately turned his head to look at the lake, but there was nothing on the lake, not even a ripple, but a few spiders were playing on the lake. Because of Yi Fei's arrival, the floating Aknam on the lake was scared and ran back into the lake, never to appear again. Yi Fei, who saw nothing, projected a jealous expression, looking at Zhang Rui in front of him. He never thought that Zhang Rui, who was just a lazy man in high school, actually knew about this mysterious legendary elf and saw it. He knew less and less about Zhang Rui. Seeing Yi Fei's jealous expression, Zhang Rui pointed to the lake in the distance and asked, looking at your expression, what should you know about the lake in front of you? Yi Fei nodded and said to Zhang Rui, I also heard about this lake from my father. In the Shanhai forest, there is a lake called Jingxin Lake. It is said that there once lived a legendary elf, Aknam. At the beginning, many people came to the surface of Jingxin Lake to wait for Aknam to appear, or dived into the lake to look for it, but in the depths of the lake, no Aknam was found, only a ruin was found inside. However, the ruins were wrapped in a mysterious energy shield, and many trainers at that time wanted to go to the ruins. Some researchers also tried to destroy the shield, but no matter how high-tech they tried, the shield still existed, with no signs of damage. There was no way. Many trainers could only return empty-handed, and the Tranquility Lake in front of them was quickly forgotten by humans. Now many people have forgotten the existence of Aknam in Tranquility Lake, but you are really amazing. You actually saw Aknam that no one has ever seen. I am so envious. Even for a moment, I want to see it too. Zhang Rui didn't know what to say. Looking at Yi Fei's jealous expression, he could only use a smile to cover up his embarrassment. At this moment, a cry for help came from a distance. Help! Who will save me? Zhang Rui heard the cry for help, his eyes were very sharp, and he ran towards the source of the sound with Kabutosaurus. Yi Fei was confused at this time, but he also ran after it. Not far from Jingxin Lake, a sonic boomer with an angry face was chasing a middle-aged man in a gray-brown coat. This man was obviously the handsome detective who came to investigate the mysterious cave. When the handsome man saw Zhang Rui and Yi Fei running out of the bushes, he immediately hid behind them, pointed at the sonic boomer in the distance, and said timidly, "Two friends, can you help me drive away this sonic boomer?" Name, Sonic Boomer. Attribute, General, Level, LV 45, Quality, A+. Gender, Male, Status, Angry/minor injury, Features, Soundproof, Items carried, None, inherited moves, Batu, reckless, divine power, basic skills, crushing, biting, sonic wave, frozen fong, flame fong, lightning fong, slap, echo, scare, howl, scream, ultrasonic wave. Skills taught, flame fist, mind hammer, secret skills, none. Fuck, this sonic monster has learned some awesome skills. Farmer's 3 punches didn't work, but Farmer's 3 fangs can do all of them, and he's actually level 45, full of experience. Zhang Rui was very excited when he saw the attributes of the sonic monster. Although the quality was a little worse, he was still very satisfied with the opponent's skills, so he thought about conquering it. Kabutosaurus, Dragon Wave. Kabutosaurus quickly appeared in front of Zhang Rui, spitting out a dragon-shaped phantom with wings, and quickly attacked the sonic monster. At this time, Zhang Rui's Pokeball was ready. As long as the sonic monster lost its combat ability, he would use the Pokeball to subdue it directly, but this sonic monster was obviously very powerful. Seeing the dragon-shaped phantom that was about to hit him, it calmly produced a series of sound waves composed of sound from the whistle on its head. The sound waves gradually increased with the distance, and the entire bush was affected by the sound waves and tilted to Zhang Rui's side, sonic waves. Zhang Rui and the other 2 covered their ears with their hands, but unfortunately they didn't. The sound directly hit their brains, making them unable to bear it. Zhang Rui tried his best and shouted to Kabutosaurus, "Hold on." Although Kabutosaurus couldn't hear Zhang Rui's voice clearly, after dozens of battles, Kabutosaurus knew Zhang Rui's thoughts without listening, and immediately propped up a green protective shield to resist the attack of the sound waves. Fortunately, it was very useful to defend, and it easily resisted the attack of the sound wave. Although the sound wave disappeared, Zhang Rui felt that the sound wave was still echoing in his ears, and it would take at least a long time to dissipate. However, just when the green protective shield disappeared, the sonic monster suddenly rushed over, with pink energy waves on its head, and crashed into the Kabutosaurus. Mind Hammer. Chapter 52. You are listening at novelfull.audio. We also use the Mind Hammer. A pink light appeared on the top of the Kabutosaurus head, and it rushed towards the sonic monster at a very fast speed. The heads of the 2 elves collided, and the powerful superpower fluctuations made Zhang Rui and the other 2 immediately use their hands to try their best to block the superpower fluctuations. At this time, the Kabutosaurus and the sonic monster were fighting each other, but Zhang Rui could see that the sonic monster would soon be unable to hold on. There was nothing he could do about it. The Kabutosaurus ate physical blocks every day, and the current physical damage was difficult to resist even if the opponent was level 45. Bang! After the fierce collision sound, the sonic monster's bulky body was actually directly knocked out by the Kabutosaurus head hammer. This Kabutosaurus is really extraordinary. The skill power is so great. The handsome guy was surprised to see that the difficult sonic monster was actually knocked away. Just now, the handsome guy saw Yi Fei and Zhang Rui resting by the Jingxin Lake. When he saw them for the first time, he was very confused as to why they were not attacked by the members of the skeleton team. In order to prevent the trainers from approaching, the skull team set up an instrument in the center that can detect the trainers approaching the mountain and sea forest. Once they are discovered, they will try every means to drive these trainers out, or defeat them directly, or even kill them. But when he saw them, the handsome guy didn't think about anything else. He only had one thought in his mind, to find a way to make them leave quickly to avoid being discovered by the skull team. After all, they are not like him, carrying signal jammers that can interfere with the detection of the skull team's instruments, so that they can't detect the handsome guy's trace. Just when the handsome guy was about to find a Pokemon that could drive the 2 away, he saw a blast monster eating tree fruits under a tree. Because the blast monster was eating lunch happily, he saw the handsome guy coming and ignored it. Boom! He also made a frightening sound to ask the handsome guy to leave quickly, but the handsome guy didn't, because the boom monster in front of him was the elf he was looking for. As long as he used the power of the boom monster, he could let Zhang Rui and Yi Fei escape from the mountain and sea forest, and there was no need to worry about them being hurt. Then, the handsome guy tried to anger the boom monster and let it try every means to chase him. At this time, the handsome guy's eyes were fixed on the stone on the ground. He thought that although this method was not appropriate, for the safety of Zhang Rui and Yi Fei, he could only take risks. Under the gaze of the boom monster, the handsome guy picked up the stone on the ground very elegantly, threw it hard at the boom monster, and then ran away without even daring to look back. Boom. As he expected, after being attacked, the boom monster blew a lot of sound waves from its flute, and it was obviously very angry. He didn't even care about the fruits on the ground, and chased after the handsome guy at an accelerated speed. Of course, the handsome guy also tried his best to escape, otherwise, his life would be in danger. Fortunately, the handsome guy's plan was successful. He attracted Zhang Rui and Yi Fei to come over. In order to save him, he started to fight with the explosion monster, but what he didn't expect was that he underestimated Zhang Rui's strength. He didn't expect that his Kabutosaurus was so powerful. With just one move, he could knock out such a terrifying explosion monster. Although it is said that the quasi-god has immeasurable strength, this strength is too strong. After seeing Zhang Rui's strength, the handsome guy had the idea of using Zhang Rui to investigate the Skull team, but he quickly abandoned it. Because this is his police business, if ordinary trainers are involved, if they encounter danger, he will find it difficult to explain to their families, which is troublesome. The handsome guy still tried to get Zhang Rui to leave here, and then he continued to investigate the Skull team and strive to find evidence that the Skull team tried to use the power of the alien beasts to control the world. The sonic monster was hit hard by the Kabutosaurus's head hammer and flew out. Although it was shocked, for a spirit like it that had experienced many battles, this was just the beginning. The sonic monster suspended in the air began to accumulate strength. Just when it was about to land, a deafening explosion sounded again, and this time it was even stronger than before. Zhang Rui and others covered their ears desperately, but they felt that their brains were about to explode, and they wanted to roll on the ground in pain. Seeing Zhang Rui in such pain, the Kabutosaurus was also distressed, and finally decided to disobey the master's order once. The dragon-shaped phantom in its mouth appeared and attacked the sonic monster at a very fast speed. Although the dragon-shaped phantom was somewhat scattered due to the sonic wave, it still hit the body of the sonic monster steadily, directly interrupting the sonic wave attack of the sonic monster, and at the same time repelling it dozens of steps. However, the Kabutosaurus was also seriously injured. After all, the sonic wave can almost be said to be the most powerful in the general system. One of the few skills, and it has no side effects, very suitable for the elves like the explosion monster who fight alone. After being hit by the dragon wave of the Kabutosaurus, the explosion monster was also hurt, but the Kabutosaurus was more seriously injured. At this time, Zhang Rui felt that the sound wave disappeared. Knowing that it was the work of the Kabutosaurus, he not only did not blame it for not listening to instructions, but praised it. The Kabutosaurus did a good job, and I will give you more energy blocks when I go back. Kabutosaurus. Obviously, the Kabutosaurus was very excited, which meant that its decision just now was correct. Zhang Rui did not blame it, but also gave it a lot of rewards. However, the battle is not over yet, and the Kabutosaurus needs to solve the enemy in front of it. The Kabutosaurus body was quickly wrapped by a phantom, like a dragon god. It can be said that the whole body turned into a dragon shape, and rushed directly to the explosion monster at an extremely fast speed. At this time, the explosion monster was a little surprised. Why did this elf attack at will without waiting for the master's order? Isn't he afraid of the master's punishment? But it couldn't care less, because the explosion monster felt threatened by the breath of the Kabutosaurus. If it was hit by this move, it would probably lose its ability to fight directly, which was absolutely unacceptable for an elf who had fought hundreds of battles and fought from level 5 to level 45, so, it had to win this battle. Red light suddenly emanated from the arms of the explosion monster, and this light quickly spread all over its arms, and then slowly condensed together, all gathered on its fist. The flame on the fist burned violently, and the explosion monster used all its strength to attack the Kabutosaurus. This time, the Kabutosaurus also used all its strength, thinking of using the dragon god dive to end the battle directly. Wherever the Kabutosaurus passed on the entire field, it was overturned by a powerful force, and the explosion monster was not to be outdone. The flame on its fist burned violently, and it turned into a fire fist. Boom! The violent collision between the fist and the body produced a force that even uprooted the weeds on the ground. The shock wave forced Zhang Rui to use his hands to block the attack of Foam Bow again. Chapter 53. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is this the full power of the sonic monster? It's so powerful that it can withstand the full force of the Kabutosaurus with just its fist. Although Zhang Rui blocked his sight with his hand, he could still see the battle between the Kabutosaurus and the sonic monster through the gap between his fingers. Time passed by, and the Kabutosaurus was still resisting the attack of the sonic monster, but the sonic monster seemed a little overwhelmed. It may be because the power of the Kabutosaurus was too strong, making it difficult for the sonic monster to resist with only its fist wrapped in flames. At this time, you can find that the sonic monster is retreating because of the collision just now, and its face is a little hideous, and the flame in its hand is gradually extinguished. Obviously, it is about to collapse, and the Kabutosaurus here, the dragon-shaped phantom wrapped all over its body, is still strong, and it is constantly moving forward. It seems that it should have the upper hand. At this moment, the flame in the hands of the explosion monster gradually extinguished, and a lot of sweat flowed out of his body. It can be seen that the explosion monster can no longer withstand the attack of the Kabutosaurus. Kabutosaurus, go! Give it the last blow. At Zhang Rui's shout, Kabutosaurus' eyes shone, and it burst out with amazing power again. The dragon-shaped phantom on its body strengthened again, and the originally dim red eyes became more real, just like the awakening of the dragon god. At this moment, the explosion monster can no longer resist the attack of the Kabutosaurus. It only feels that its body has lost control. The Kabutosaurus took the opportunity to rush towards it and knocked the explosion monster out again. Zhang Rui saw the opportunity and threw the pokeball in his hand, and put the explosion monster into the pokeball in the air. As the pokeball fell, Zhang Rui thought that the explosion monster should be subdued. But at the moment when the pokeball fell to the ground, bang! The original complete red and white ball suddenly exploded, and the explosion monster ran out of the pokeball. Although it was very angry now, it looked at Zhang Rui in front of it and the middle-aged man who angered it. Although it wanted to deal with the middle-aged man in front of it, it had no strength. If it stayed here, it would only be dealt with by the Kabutops. Then, the explosion monster used the whistle on its head again to burst out a deafening sound wave. Just when Zhang Rui covered his ears with his hands, the explosion monster took the opportunity to run into the bushes and disappeared. This time the sound wave was very short and disappeared after a few seconds. When Zhang Rui looked for the explosion monster again, there was no explosion monster in front of him, only the bushes gently blown by the autumn wind. I actually let it run away. I was thinking of taming it. Zhang Rui found that there was no explosion monster, and couldn't help sighing. After seeing the sonic monster leave, the Kabutosaurus could no longer hold on and collapsed to the ground. Although it did not lose its fighting ability, it had no strength to stand up again. Seeing this, Zhang Rui hurried over to the Kabutosaurus, stroked its hard body, and comforted it. You have worked hard in this battle, take a good rest. After that, Zhang Rui took the Kabutosaurus back into the pokeball and let it take a good rest. Although the sonic monster escaped this time, Zhang Rui did not gain nothing. Because the Kabutosaurus tried its best just now, its level was raised again. It is normal for the Kabutosaurus to reach level 41. On the one hand, it has the advantage of qualifications. Compared with those A-level qualifications, this S-level top-quality qualification is also very impressive in terms of gaining experience. In addition, the Kabutosaurus is facing a level 45 sonic monster. Facing the final evolved form of the Pokémon, it has a lot of experience itself, not to mention that it is a high-level Pokémon at level 45, which gives more experience. Now there are only 9 levels left before the Kabutosaurus can evolve. Zhang Rui believes that this day will come soon. After Zhang Rui put the Kabutosaurus back into the Pokeball, he stood up and came to the handsome guy. Yi Fei on the side said excitedly, the battle just now was really thrilling for me. Your Kabutosaurus is really amazing. If it were me, I would have no way to deal with that kind of terrifying power of the sonic monster. But Zhang Rui just nodded to Yi Fei, turned his head and looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and said, Sir, you are not injured just now, right? The handsome guy scratched his head embarrassedly, and said apologetically in his tone, It's okay, thanks to your timely help, otherwise, I might have died at the hands of the sonic monster. After that, in order to express his gratitude, the handsome guy took out 2 brooches with different patterns from his clothes pocket and handed them to Zhang Rui. This is the latest Pokemon brooch developed by our company. I don't know what to thank you with, so I will use these 2 brooches to represent I am grateful. I hope you won't refuse. Seeing the handsome guy say this, Zhang Rui had no intention of refusing, mainly because the 2 brooches were so cute. One of them was Pikachu and the other was Eevee. Zhang Rui liked them both, but such good things should be shared with brothers, so he put the brooch in his hand in front of Yi Fei and let him choose. At first, Yi Fei was a little dazed, but soon he became moved. So he took the brooch engraved with Eevee and hung it directly on his clothes. It's true that you are good brothers, sharing things together. After seeing Yi Fei wearing it, Zhang Rui turned around and wanted to ask the handsome guy something, but when he turned around, he found that the middle-aged man in front of him had disappeared. Originally, Zhang Rui wanted to ask him why he appeared here. After all, Zhang Rui was not stupid. The man in front of him could actually appear in the inner area of Shanghai Forest. He must not be an ordinary person. Ordinary trainers are active in the periphery and rarely appear in the inner area. The main reason is that the Pokemon in the inner area are too powerful and ferocious. If ordinary trainers encounter them, it is good enough to be able to save half of their lives, and those trainers who can move freely in the inner area are generally of high level and can easily deal with the attacks of wild elves, or have a chance to avoid the pursuit of wild elves. Since the middle-aged man just now was able to walk to a place close to the central area, his strength must be unfathomable. But Zhang Rui saw from his behavior just now that the middle-aged man had no ill will towards him. If he wanted to take action, he would have taken action when Zhang Rui was fighting with the explosive monster just now. However, since the middle-aged man disappeared, Zhang Rui did not continue to look for him. Instead, he put the brooch in his pocket and walked towards the central area with Yi Fei. At this time, Yi Fei suddenly asked, Rui, have you been walking towards the central area since entering the Shanghai Forest? In my opinion, your mind is not on special training at all. Do you have other purposes for coming here? And you seem to be very familiar with those who attacked us on the periphery. Can you tell me the fundamental purpose of your coming here now? Chapter 54. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hearing Yi Fei's question, Zhang Rui looked at him and thought to himself, I should tell him about this matter. After all, what we may face later is the terrifying skeleton team. If Yi Fei is attacked by the skeleton team without knowing it, I will definitely regret it for the rest of my life. After telling him, let him have his own choice. Whether he chooses to explore the situation in the central area with me or leave the forest and go back to the mountain and see Elf Academy, it is his own choice. Then, Zhang Rui told Yi Fei his original purpose and wanted to see Yi Fei's own choice. After listening to Zhang Rui's words, Yi Fei thought for a while and said to Zhang Rui, You mean, you came here this time to see if the mysterious cave in the sky is a supernatural phenomenon? And those who attacked us may be active in the center of the forest? That's right, whether you choose to follow or choose to go back, it's your own choice, and I must check this matter clearly, so that I can rest assured. Zhang Rui's words were very firm, which made Yi Fei think more deeply. Judging from the 2 people he just faced, these people might be very strong. If he followed them, if something unexpected happened, he might lose his life, but he was worried that Zhang Rui would go to the central area alone to fight those terrifying guys. Although the Kabutops were very powerful, the other side was outnumbered. With only one Kabutops, Zhang Rui would definitely not be able to deal with it. However, when Yi Fei thought about Zhang Rui's behavior of sharing the brooch with him without thinking much after getting it, since his brother would still think about him after getting the benefits, how could he abandon his brother and leave alone? After a few seconds of ideological struggle, Yi Fei finally made a decision. He looked at Zhang Rui and said firmly, You are my brother, of course I have to share the hardships with you. Let's go. Let's go see what those mysterious people are doing in there. After Yi Fei finished speaking, he turned and walked towards Jingxin Lake. After hearing Yi Fei's decision, Zhang Rui obviously didn't know what to say. He sighed, and then went back to Jingxin Lake with Yi Fei. After packing up his backpack, he walked towards the center of the forest Zhang Rui had just left. The handsome guy leaned against the tree behind Zhang Rui, looking serious and saying nothing. Soon, Zhang Rui and Yi Fei spent less than an hour to arrive near the skeleton team camp. Zhang Rui could see the huge instrument in front of him through the grass in front. The instrument looked like a satellite launch machine, shaking its head constantly, as if it was detecting the terrain of the entire mountain, sea, and forest. Zhang Rui did not go forward immediately, but pulled away the grass in front of him, revealing a wide field of vision, and looked at the skeleton team members in the distance. Yi Fei beside him naturally did not speak. He was still aware of the situation here. As long as he spoke and was heard by the skeleton team members in front of him, it would be like seeking death. He did not want to die young. However, when he saw the instrument for the first time, he was also shocked by the scene in front of him. The instrument in front of him was very huge. In addition to the satellite launcher, there was also a huge computer controller and other operating parts. Of course, to operate such a huge instrument, the help of electric elves is needed. There are a large number of lightning balls and other electric elves in the cage not far away. The electricity in their bodies is used to generate electricity for the huge instrument, but judging from their expressions, it is obvious that the electricity in their bodies is consumed too much and their bodies are very tired. It seems that if these electric elves are not treated, they will die due to power exhaustion. Zhang Rui also noticed these electric elves. I am afraid that these elves were captured by the skeleton team from the forest. No wonder he and Yi Fei have been walking for so long and have not seen a hair of an electric elf. It turns out that they were all captured here. In addition to the instruments, there are also researchers who are very busy in white coats. In addition, there are a large number of skeleton team members who are guarding nearby to prevent interference from others. Zhang Rui saw the white-haired man sitting in front of the wooden house at a glance. He was wearing black sunglasses on his head and a golden necklace around his neck. Guzma. Zhang Rui whispered. He didn't expect that the white-haired man in front of him looked so similar to Guzma in the anime, both with white hair. However, the only difference is that the skeleton team led by Guzma in the anime is very small, and its main goal is to snatch elves and make trouble. It is not as large as it is now, with dozens of researchers trying to open the ultimate cave through machines and summon the beasts from another world. Guzma is enjoying himself very much at this time, lying on the wooden he was sitting on a chair made of a head, swaying his body and drinking afternoon tea. His life was very comfortable. Just then, a member of the Skull team walked up to Guzma holding a magnemite that had lost its power, and said, "Boss, this magnemite is dying. Should we charge it and let it recover a little?" After hearing what the Skull team member said, Guzma took a sip of tea and said to the man in front of him, "Just throw away this kind of used waste." "Yes." After the Skull team member answered, he came to Zhang Rui not far away with magnemite in his arms, and threw the magnemite in his hand out expressionlessly. Ouch! Magnemite hit Yi Fei's head directly, and Yi Fei couldn't help but scream. Soon, the members of the skeleton team became suspicious and asked the bushes in front of them, "Who is it?" As he spoke, he took out the detector from his body to check if there was a red dot. But when he found no red dot, he said to Yi Fei, "You didn't tell me where you were squatting. Watch out next time. If I throw a stone at you, you might die right away, okay?" Hearing that there was no response in the bushes, the member thought that he had been knocked unconscious by him, and ignored it, and went back to the camp to continue monitoring. In fact, if the skeleton team members want to check for intruders, they only need to use the detector in their hands. As long as a red dot appears, it means that there is an intruder. If not, it means that the person in front of them is a companion. After all, in order to identify intruders, Guzma will carry jammers on all members who enter the skeleton team, in order to block the signal and better identify the intruder. Obviously, this skeleton member recognized Yi Fei as a companion, so he did not go to check. Yi Fei thought they were lucky and thus avoided the inspection of the Skull team members. However, Zhang Rui took out a brooch with Pikachu printed on it and fell into thought. Rui, what should we do with this little Magneto? It's very weak now," Yi Fei said in a very small voice, but still pulled Zhang Rui's thoughts back. Chapter 55. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Rui stared at the weak magnemite in front of him and checked its physical condition through the data. Name, magnemite, attribute, electricity/steel, level, LV25, quality, A, gender, none, status, weak, lack of power, Feature, magnetism. Carrying props, none. This Magnemite is weak due to lack of power. We don't have any electric Pokémon to treat it, so we can only wait until we return to the Pokémon Center to treat it. If we leave it here, it will soon die of weakness due to lack of power. Yifei couldn't bear to see Magnemite die like this after hearing Zhang Rui's words. After obtaining Zhang Rui's consent, he took out the Pokeball and captured Magnemite. After that, the two continued to watch their actions. At this time, Yifei knew that they were definitely not good people, so he took out his mobile phone to take pictures, filmed all the evidence of these people's crimes, and asked the elf guard to come and bring all these people to justice. Zhang Rui also agreed with Yifei's idea and agreed to do so. Yifei took out the mobile phone he had just bought, Yali Pro 13, which was the latest mobile phone on the market. In addition to the elf picture book function, everything else was available. Pointing the camera at the skeleton team in the distance, Yifei thought to himself, "This time we have evidence, let's see how you can escape the punishment of the law." With a click sound, the mobile phone made a very loud sound. For a moment, Zhang Rui wanted to kick Yifei out. Before taking pictures, he didn't even check whether the mobile phone had turned off the sound of taking pictures. "You are afraid that the skeleton team will not find you." When Yifei heard the sound of taking pictures, he was also very panicked. How could he forget that this mobile phone was newly bought and had not been used to take pictures once? It needs to be debugged before taking pictures, which is troublesome now. Guzma, who was sitting there, heard the sound of taking pictures in the distance and looked at the members of the skeleton team beside him. All the members of the skeleton team walked towards Zhang Rui and Yifei, holding the Pokeballs in their hands, with a hint of ferocity in their eyes. Zhang Rui and Yifei saw that the situation was not good and immediately wanted to run away. The members of the skeleton team summoned all the Pokémons, most of which were the evolved forms of Meow Meow, the cat boss, and a few were Meow Meow. Catch up with those two people. At the command of the skeleton team members, the cat boss and Meow Meow collectively went out and ran towards Zhang Rui at a very fast speed. While running, Zhang Rui said to Yifei beside him, "Let's run separately, get rid of the Pokémons behind us, and meet at Jingxin Lake." Yifei also agreed with Zhang Rui's point of view. After nodding, he ran in another direction. Zhang Rui chose the opposite direction, trying to shake off the cat boss and Meow Meow behind him. However, these cat bosses were also very smart and knew to split into two groups. The cat boss and Meow Meow who were closer to Zhang Rui were responsible for chasing Zhang Rui, and those who were closer to Yifei were also chasing Yifei. However, no matter how you look at it, there were obviously more cat bosses chasing Zhang Rui. Moreover, these cat bosses were very fast. One of the higher-level cat bosses saw that it was only a few centimeters away from Zhang Rui, so it jumped up and pounced directly on Zhang Rui in front. Fortunately, Zhang Rui was smart. At the moment when the cat boss's claws were about to catch Zhang Rui quickly dodged to the right, causing the cat boss's claws to miss and only tear a big hole in Zhang Rui's clothes. Zhang Rui saw that the cat boss was chasing him here, and it seemed that he would not give up until he caught him. Zhang Rui felt a little tired and couldn't run anymore. Although he had been using the terrain advantage to deal with the cat boss, his physical strength had reached the limit. Sweat was pouring down like rain, and Zhang Rui couldn't run anymore. Since he couldn't run anymore, he would just start fighting. He took out the Pokeball containing the Kabutosaurus and summoned it. After such a long time, the Kabutosaurus body should have recovered a little, and it was still very confident to deal with these cat bosses around level 35. After seeing the Kabutosaurus, these cat bosses were not afraid, but attacked the Kabutosaurus. The red gems on the heads of these cat bosses were glowing red, and a lot of power was gathered in them. A red light quickly emerged from the gems and attacked the Kabutosaurus. Power gem. Facing the dense red rays, Zhang Rui did not let the Kabutosaurus attack, but quickly gave an order and said, "Use hold and block all these rays." The Kabutosaurus body was wrapped in green light, and it directly stretched out a huge green shield. Wrap it and Zhang Rui in it, and block all the flying red rays. Dragon God Dive. At the moment when the green shield disappeared, Zhang Rui immediately gave the order to the Kabutosaurus. The success rate of using the defense next time is still too low. Now only by using the skill quickly after the opponent's attack ends can there be a chance of winning. the Kabutosaurus body was wrapped in a dragon-shaped phantom. After the last battle with the sonic monster, the Kabutosaurus had a deeper understanding of the skill of Dragon God Dive. The dragon-shaped phantom with blue eyes had turned red, indicating that the power was even stronger. The Kabutosaurus, which had been wrapped in the dragon-shaped phantom, burst out with amazing momentum and ran towards the cat boss in front at a very fast speed. The other cat bosses quickly dodged after seeing this attack. And those with slower reaction speeds could only withstand the impact of the Kabutosaurus body. The cat bosses that were attacked could not bear such a strong impact at all. Their whole bodies flew out and hit the tree heavily, losing their ability to fight. Due to the large number of cat bosses, the Kabutosaurus just reduced the threat of some cat bosses and slightly increased one level. Now it has reached level 42, as the level increased, the Kabutosaurus's momentum increased again. Although these cat bosses were still a little afraid, they still obeyed the orders of their masters. In other words, the cat bosses would never give up until they completed the task. Seeing that the skills just now had no effect, the other cat bosses chose to fight. They jumped up with the help of the trees, bounced back and forth on the trees a few times, found their position, and pounced on the Kabutosaurus on the ground. The sharp claws emitted a cold light, as if they were going to tear the white shell of the Kabutosaurus apart. A surprise attack. Use the head hammer. Zhang Rui really wanted to let Kabutosaurus use the mind hammer at this time. After all, the mind hammer is more powerful, but unfortunately, these cat bosses are all evil elves, and the super power skills have no effect. There is no way. Zhang Rui can only let Kabutosaurus use the head hammer to attack, although the power is a little less, but it is more than enough to deal with these cat bosses. Chapter 56. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing that the cat boss was about to pounce, the Kabutosaurus aimed at one of the targets and accelerated suddenly. The cat boss who was about to pounce was frightened by the Kabutosaurus's actions and was then directly knocked away by the Kabutosaurus. The other cat bosses obviously didn't care about the life and death of their companions. They all swarmed towards the Kabutosaurus, and their sharp claws emitted cold light and kept scratching the Kabutosaurus. Kabuto. Hearing the painful roar of the Kabutosaurus, Zhang Rui was startled. Although the Kabutosaurus had a high defense and could still withstand the attack of the cat boss, it was now facing the siege of a group of cat bosses. Even if the Kabutosaurus had a high defense, it would be difficult to withstand the claws of the cat boss. At this moment, Zhang Rui suddenly thought of a method that might work. Kabutosaurus, rotate and use the dragon claws. After hearing this, Kabutosaurus still felt a little confused. It was so bulky, how could it rotate and use the dragon claws? Besides, its claws were so short that it was questionable whether it could touch the cat boss. However, after seeing Zhang Rui's determined look, Kabutosaurus seemed to think of something. Kabutosaurus immediately used the characteristics of its body to stand upside down, with its back close to the ground, and its most vulnerable abdomen was exposed. Meowed at the cat bosses and Meows saw the strange behavior of Kabutosaurus. The white armor on Kabutosaurus was originally used to resist external attacks. Now it's good to turn over directly. Isn't this courting death? At the order of the other cat bosses, a large number of cat bosses and Meows swarmed in, waving their sharp claws at it, as if they wanted to tear Kabutosaurus apart. Unfortunately, the Kabutosaurus would not let them succeed. The Kabutosaurus limbs were wrapped in green energy, just like the claws of a dragon, extremely sharp. Just when the cat boss was about to touch it, the Kabutosaurus body quickly rotated, like a gyroscope, and knocked the cat boss and Meow flying. At this time, Zhang Rui stood aside and could see the cat boss and Meow flying in the air. Some of them were directly hit on the tree by the impact just now and lost their combat ability, while others directly collided with their companions and lost their combat ability at the same time. Of course, there were still some cat bosses and Meows left on the field, but they no longer dared to attack the Kabutosaurus, mainly because they were scared by the attack of the Kabutosaurus just now. After the attack of the Kabutosaurus just now, their number was greatly reduced. Now there is only one cat boss and 9 Meows left, and the rest of the cat bosses have all lost their combat ability. The last cat boss saw that the situation was not good, and immediately led Meow to retreat. He didn't dare to fight with the Kabutosaurus anymore, after all, his claws couldn't win. After the cat boss and Meow Meow retreated, Zhang Rui immediately ran to the Kabutosaurus and pushed it hard to change it back to its original state. After changing back, he saw the wound on the Kabutosaurus's back, and he couldn't help but feel a little heartbroken. Touching the Kabutosaurus's hard body, he said to it, "This battle has made you suffer, and there are so many scratches on your body." The Kabutosaurus seemed to understand Zhang Rui's mood and rubbed his body with his body, as if to say that it was fine and not to worry. Zhang Rui stroked its body with his hand, and said with relief, "But fortunately, only after the test of life and death, your will become stronger. After this incident, your strength will definitely be improved. Besides, you have gained a lot this time. The level has been upgraded again to level 44, jumping 2 levels in a row, and you have also learned a new skill, Ghost Face." Zhang Rui frowned. Why did Kabutosaurus learn Ghost Face after upgrading 2 levels? This is very strange. This kind of skill that reduces gain can be learned by ordinary elves in the early stage, but Kabutosaurus learned this skill in the later stage. But forget it, one more skill is always better than one less skill. Kabutosaurus. After Kabutosaurus responded to Zhang Rui's voice, Zhang Rui took it back into the Pokeball and let it recover well, because Zhang Rui felt that when he summoned it again, there might be a big battle. Then, he put the Pokeball back in his pocket and ran quickly towards the direction of Jingxin Lake. Although his current problem has been solved, Zhang Rui is still worried about Yifei's safety. After all, Yifei is not as strong as Zhang Rui. With only a level 35 cool leopard, it is difficult for him to stand out among many cat bosses. However, Zhang Rui believes that Yifei can definitely break through successfully, which is why he did not rescue him. Although Yifei always lags behind in every action, his luck is sometimes particularly good. Zhang Rui remembers that when he and Yifei were playing as children, they accidentally entered the mountain on the outskirts of Jinhai Forest near Haishir. Zhang Rui encountered a ferocious monkey monster. The color of this monkey monster's body is slightly different from other monkey monsters, and its eyes are red and very violent. Zhang Rui was still young at the time, so he fed the monkey monster with the fruit he carried with him. Just when Zhang Rui handed the fruit in his hand to the monkey monster suddenly went crazy and attacked Zhang Rui in front of him. Zhang Rui did not expect the monkey monster to have such a reaction. He was so scared that he dropped all the fruit in his hand on the ground and dared not move. Fortunately, Yifei, who was playing with the caterpillar not far away, found that Zhang Rui was in danger, and immediately ran over and used all his strength to drag Zhang Rui out. This also caused the monkey monster's attack to fail, but it also made the monkey monster even more angry, and rushed towards Zhang Rui. Just as the monkey monster's fist was about to hit Yifei, the green caterpillar in the distance seemed to be attacked by the Pidgeot. Because the ground was very open at that time, the distance to the nearest tree was at least dozens of meters. For a green caterpillar, it is very difficult to avoid the attack of the Pidgeot. Facing the crisis of life and death, the green caterpillar can only desperately spit silk, hoping to trap the Pidgeot by spitting silk and strive for a glimmer of life. However, it is a coincidence that the white silk thread hits the monkey monster. Due to the influence of spitting silk, the monkey monster is very inconvenient to move. It can only tear off the silk thread on its body before continuing to attack. This also gave Zhang Rui and Yifei a chance to escape. The two hurriedly stood up and ran away desperately, hoping to get help from adults. However, they were thin at that time and ran very slowly. Before they ran for a long time, the monkey monster had already pulled off the white silk thread in his hand, angrily looking at the two people who were running away in the distance, raising his arms high, and chasing them. At this time, the caterpillar had already exhausted its silk and needed a little rest. The Pidgeot, which was looking for an opportunity in the air, found the opportunity and flew towards the caterpillar at lightning speed. Chapter 57. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This time, the caterpillar had no strength to dodge the attack of the Pidgeot. It could only let its claws tightly grasp its body and prepare to fly to the nest in the distance. At this time, the caterpillar used all its strength to fight to the death. It raised its head and sprayed the last silk thread at the Pidgeot. Originally, it did not hold much hope. It saw the white silk thread slowly falling to the ground. Suddenly, a breeze blew, and the originally falling silk thread was blown up by the wind. it was very accurately wrapped around the eyes of the Pidgeot, causing the Pidgeot to be unable to see the front clearly. It kept shaking in the air and could not control the center of gravity of its body. It did not notice the obstacles in front of it and crashed directly into it. The caterpillar was saved, but the Pidgeot happened to fall on the monkey monster. The monkey monster immediately fought with the Pidgeot. Who would care about Zhang Rui and Yifei in the distance? This also created an opportunity for the two to escape successfully. Since then, Zhang Rui and Yifei have become best brothers and have never had any conflicts. But the monkey monster at that time was really strange. Its eyes were red, while other monkey monsters' eyes were obviously black pupils. That this was also something Zhang Rui couldn't figure out. However, after this incident, Zhang Rui felt that Yifei must be a lucky person, and this little thing must be no problem. Sure enough, when Zhang Rui came to Jingxin Lake, he saw Yifei, who had been waiting for a long time. Yifei, who was full of worry, saw Zhang Rui coming, and hurried over and asked worriedly, Rui, you are not injured? In response to Yifei's inquiry, Zhang Rui showed his body with joy on his face, saying that he was very healthy and let him rest assured. Boy, you can do it. You can successfully escape from the siege of the cat boss. The voice came from behind Yifei. At this time, Zhang Rui was very familiar with it. It was the middle-aged man who suddenly disappeared just now. It's you? Without looking at Zhang Rui's puzzled eyes, Yifei hurriedly introduced, it was this uncle who saved me at the critical moment, otherwise, I might have been killed by the cat boss now. After hearing Yifei's words, Zhang Rui walked up to the handsome guy and thanked him. Thank you for saving Yifei, but can you tell you who it is now? As he said, he took out a brooch with Pikachu printed on it and said, if I guess correctly, the brooch in my hand is the jammer, right? Otherwise, we would have been discovered by the Skull team long ago. The handsome guy listened to Zhang after hearing Rui's words. He said solemnly, you are only half right. The brooch in your hand is indeed the jammer I gave you, because I have long discovered that your purpose is not simple, and you seem to be very concerned about the affairs of the Skull team. So, in order to prevent you from being in danger, I will give you the jammer we studied to prevent the Skull team from discovering your whereabouts. However, I now think that this kind of thing is redundant, because you already have a jammer on you. With the handsome guy's advice, Zhang Rui seemed to think of something and took out the detector he picked up from his body. Yes, this is it, the detector developed by the Skull team. It can not only detect foreign trainers, but also block your location. But this machine is so magical that it can detect invading trainers without interfering with satellite instruments. I admire the wisdom of the Skull team. From what you mean, you have seen the huge instrument of the Skull team. Zhang Rui looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and asked. That's right. I knew about the equipment built by the skeleton team in the center of the Shanghai forest before you did, and I also guessed the skeleton team's plan from ancient documents. Although I know the dangers of this plan, I can't stop it, because I'm afraid I can't accomplish this thing by myself. Since I found you too, you will be the turning point for the success of my plan. After hearing the handsome guy's words, Zhang Rui also thought about it carefully. Indeed, relying on only him and Yifei, it is probably impossible to realize the plan, but with the middle-aged man in front of him joining, this matter is uncertain. Maybe it can not only stop the skeleton team's plan, but even achieve his goal. Yes, you really think that Zhang Rui's goal is to discover the skeleton team's plan and satisfy his curiosity? If that's all, it's a big mistake. He has other purposes, and this is what he must do. However, even though Zhang Rui listened to the middle-aged man's words, he still didn't know his identity, so he asked, can you tell me your real identity now? After all, you don't even tell us your identity, how can we trust you? After hearing Zhang Rui's words, the handsome guy finally realized that he had not introduced himself yet, so he coughed twice and said solemnly, my name is Handsome, a detective from the Elf Alliance. Handsome, Yifei, who was standing aside, couldn't help laughing after hearing the middle-aged man's words. You said you are called Handsome. Where are you handsome? You are already middle-aged. Not only Yifei, Zhang Rui also laughed. He had heard of all kinds of weird names, but he didn't expect that someone would give him such a weird name. Seeing that the two were laughing at him, the handsome guy frowned and said, this is just my code name. I can't tell you my real name. Zhang Rui naturally knew the mystery of the Alliance detective. After all, as a detective, his identity must be kept confidential. Afterwards, Zhang Rui and Yi Fei also finished their self-introductions, and both sides began to make plans to strive for success once, at the same time, in the central area of Shanghai Forest. How is it? Did you catch those two? The white-haired Guzma looked at the group of skeleton team members in front of him, straightened his back, and said in a very threatening voice, these skeleton team members naturally failed in their planned capture operation. They lowered their heads one by one, not daring to look at Guzma. Waste, a bunch of waste, you can't even catch two little brats, what's the use of you? Boss, it's not that we can't catch them, it's mainly because the two boys are too strong. We sent out 100 elves, but only 10 came back. When we went to see the others, they had lost their combat capabilities. One of the brave skeleton team members explained. After hearing this, Guzma became even angrier and cursed, we sent out so many elves, but only 10 came back. Are you kidding me? Just as Guzma was about to continue teaching the members of the Skull team a lesson, a helicopter slowly descended from the sky. A slim woman walked out of it, wearing a Skull team headscarf, with two colored ponytails, and white powder makeup on the corners of her eyes. If she washed her face, she would definitely be a beauty. Bulmai, what's wrong with you? Chapter 58. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Big Sister. When many members of the skeleton team saw Bull Beauty, their eyes lit up and they said excitedly. A bunch of trash, not worthy of calling my name. Bull Beauty said fiercely without even looking at them, who knows how many members of the skeleton team were hurt by her words. I hope your visit this time is good news. Guzma said. I saw Bull Beauty folding her arms and said proudly, of course, bring the things up. As soon as the voice fell, the skeleton team members on the helicopter carried a huge box in the back, and the cat boss was responsible for pulling it in front, and soon lifted it in front of Guzma. Guzma stared at the box in front of him, seemed to think of something, and immediately opened the box. It can be seen that the huge box is already filled with a large number of Pokeballs, but these are not ordinary Pokeballs, but ultimate balls specially used to capture ultimate beasts. Yes, that's what I've been waiting for. Good performance, Bull Beauty, what reward do you want? Bull Beauty shook her body and came to Guzma, sliding in front of him twice. Guzma naturally knew what she was thinking, then he turned and shouted to the members of the skeleton team in front of him, you have a good rest today. Tomorrow we will start the final experiment. Remember, we must keep a close watch tomorrow. We must not let a little kid affect the plan like today. Yes. All the members of the skeleton team shouted together, then, in their eyes, they watched Bull Beauty and Guzma walk into the cabin. What happened, of course, needless to say, in short, it hurt the hearts of the skeleton team members. Night gradually fell. Located on the shore of the quiet lake, Zhang Rui and the other two had finished dinner, and after feeding the elves, the handsome guy had already fallen asleep, while Zhang Rui was looking at the lake in the distance, hoping to see Akanam again. However, since that disappearance, the shadow of Akanam has never appeared again. At that time, Zhang Rui only saw Akanam's appearance. When he wanted to check the data through the data eye, Akanam disappeared. Still thinking about Akanam, Zhang Rui turned his head to look aside, nodded, and said, Yi Fei, why haven't you slept yet? You still have to execute the plan tomorrow. If you don't get enough sleep, it is likely to affect the progress of the plan. Don't worry. I will complete tomorrow's plan perfectly. Seeing Yi Fei's confident expression, Zhang Rui couldn't help but smile, and his eyes looked at the water in front of him again. Although the plan has been arranged, Zhang Rui is still a little worried, mainly Guzma's strength. Zhang Rui doesn't know how much strength he has, but since he is the boss of the skeleton team, it means that his strength should be above the members of the skeleton team, but Zhang Rui hasn't seen his true strength yet, so it's inevitable that he is still a little worried, but Zhang Rui thought again, there is no point in worrying now. In order to achieve his goal, he must complete this difficult plan, otherwise, Zhang Rui is worried that he will miss it. Afterwards, Zhang Rui and Yi Fei chatted for a while and went back to the tent to sleep. The first ray of sunlight in the morning shone on the surface of Jingxin Lake. Of course, it also shone on Zhang Rui's face. Zhang Rui's eyes trembled slightly for a few times, and then he opened his eyes in a daze. Is it dawn? Zhang Rui looked at the time again. It was already 7 o'clock in the morning. Zhang Rui got up to wake Yi Fei up, and when he wanted to call the handsome guy, he found that there was no figure in the tent. It's cold inside the tent, which means he has been gone for a while. Just then, Zhang Rui saw the handsome guy coming out of the bushes in the distance and explained to Zhang Rui, I just made a phone call. Let's prepare first and strive for success. Please, we only have this one chance. If we fail, we won't have the next time. Yi Fei stood up, yawned, and said. I apologize to you on behalf of the Alliance for letting you carry out such a dangerous mission with me. The handsome guy's face was very calm and a little plain. It seemed that he was very serious, but Yi Fei smiled and said, Aren't we doing this to protect the world? It's worth it. At this time, Zhang Rui did not answer. Zhang Rui had been thinking about who the handsome guy was calling. At such a critical moment, it must be a very important person. After the three of them packed up their things, they came to the bushes where they watched last time. However, this time the skeleton team obviously strengthened its defenses. Not far from the center, there were many skeleton team members guarding Zhang Rui. Also, it was at the risk of being discovered that they came to the edge of the Shanghai forest. Through the bushes, it can be seen that the inner area of the Shanghai forest has obviously increased its protection this time. Many members of the skeleton team have formed a circle and summoned all the elves to patrol. With the presence of Cat Boss and Meow Meow, patrolling is obviously much easier, mainly because its sense of smell is very sharp and can smell the smell that does not belong here. It seems that they have strengthened their precautions this time. Are they finally going to carry out the final plan? Zhang Rui was thinking while observing the surrounding situation. However, at this moment, Guzma came out of the wooden house, and many members of the skeleton team reported to him, Boss, everything is ready, and the experiment will start at any time. Guzma nodded, walked to the instrument, and said to the researcher, Let's start. I can't wait. The researcher didn't say anything, walked to the instrument, and pressed the red button of the instrument with his hand. At the moment the button was pressed, the electric spirit sleeping in the iron cage was suddenly awakened by a force, and then a large amount of current was drawn from the electric spirit in a visible way to keep the instrument running. As the current was transmitted, a yellow light was released from the launch port of the instrument, directly hitting the space above the mountain and sea forest. The transmission of current increased sharply, and the electric spirit also endured the pain of the current being drawn out. At this time, Yi Fei couldn't watch it anymore, and was immediately stopped by the handsome guy, who shook his head at him, indicated not to act rashly and act according to circumstances. At this time, Yi Fei could only clench his fists, endure the pain, and watch a large amount of current being delivered to the launch port of the instrument. The yellow light was obviously widening, and in the sky, it seemed that something was broken, and then these fragments continued to condense in the air, first turning into a black hole, then changing from black to light blue, and then emitting light blue light. Ultimate Cave, done. Chapter 59. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A huge ultimate cave suddenly appeared in the originally azure sky. The ultimate cave kept rotating in the air, emitting strong energy. At the same time, the residents of the entire Shanghai city saw the ultimate cave in the sky, but many people just looked at it for a few seconds, without any shock on their faces. But think about it, it's not the first time they have seen this scene. Anyway, it will disappear in a few minutes, so they didn't pay attention to it. On the other hand, the skeleton team in the central area all looked up at the ultimate cave in the sky, with excitement on their faces. Even Guzma's eyes trembled violently, staring at the ultimate cave in front of him. Great, our great plan is about to succeed. Before this, Guzma had conducted many experiments, and he didn't know how many times he had failed, from not being able to open the cave to being able to open the ultimate cave for a long time now. This took a lot of time and energy, so it was inevitable that Guzma would be very excited. Even many skeleton teams wiped their noses and tears after seeing the results of their efforts. It was really difficult. The ultimate cave is open, should we take action? Yi Fei, who was squatting in the bushes, stared at the ultimate cave and asked the handsome guy next to him. Originally, the three planned to destroy the instrument that opened the ultimate cave after the ultimate cave was opened, when all the members of the skeleton team had not yet reacted, but the handsome guy said, "Wait a minute, I forgot to take pictures as evidence." The handsome guy took out a small camera he carried with him from his clothes, which could hold thousands of photos, which was no problem at all. There was no way. Zhang Rui and Yi Fei could only wait for him to take pictures before taking action. Now Zhang Rui prayed in his heart that the handsome guy must not make a sound when taking pictures like Yi Fei, otherwise their sneak attack plan would fail. At this moment, he pointed the camera at the scene in front of him and pressed the shutter. Zhang Rui was relieved when he heard that the camera had no sound, but when he saw the handsome guy taking pictures, he suddenly found that the camera actually had a flash. "Handsome guy, your flash is not turned off." Zhang Rui reminded. The handsome guy turned on the camera and checked the settings. Indeed, he forgot to turn off the flash. After turning off the flash, he was about to take a photo, but it was too late. The flash just now had attracted the attention of all the members of the skeleton team. All the skeleton team members, including their elves, were looking at the bushes in the distance, with fierce looks on their faces. Of course, Guzma's veins were also bulging, and he immediately gave an order. "It's these people again, catch them for me. Remember, destroy their cameras this time. If the photos are leaked, we will be wanted by the Alliance." With Guzma's order, many skeleton team members ordered Cat Boss and Meow Meow to rush towards Zhang Rui. At this time, the handsome guy was still taking pictures, without any sense of crisis. Zhang Rui was a little speechless. What's the point of taking so many photos? If he was caught, all these photos would be destroyed. However, Zhang Rui had no time to care about the handsome guy, and quickly said to Yi Fei beside him, "Since we have been discovered, we will plan ahead of time. Yi Fei, go and destroy the instruments in front of you and rescue those electric elves." Yi Fei nodded. He didn't say anything nonsense. He directly summoned the cool leopard, rode on it, and ran towards the instrument at a very fast speed. "Stop him!" Many members of the skeleton team shouted, and the cat bosses around them all swarmed up and chased Yi Fei. After a period of recovery, the cool leopard is now in excellent physical condition and can move freely. The cat bosses behind can't catch up at all. And Zhang Rui summoned the armored dragon and gave it an order: use the dragon god dive to open the way for Yi Fei. The armored dragon nodded, and its body exuded blue-purple energy. Its body was like a dragon god. Its body was quickly wrapped, and its eyes emitted red light, galloping away at a very fast speed. Just when many cat bosses were about to catch Yi Fei, a blue-purple flash rushed out, and all the cat bosses who were about to touch Yi Fei were easily knocked away. What the hell? What damage can this Kabutosaurus do? With just one move, my cat boss lost his ability to fight. Is he cheating? One of the members of the skeleton team put the cat boss back into the pokeball and said in surprise. However, because Kabutosaurus was sent out to protect Yi Fei, Zhang Rui had no guards. Many cats surrounded Zhang Rui and stretched out their sharp claws, as if to indicate that if you dare to run, our claws will tear you apart. When others encounter this in this situation, they might be scared. After all, Meow Meow's claws are deadly, but for Zhang Rui, they can only touch it first. Then, Zhang Rui took out the pokeball containing young Kiras from his body. Go. Young Kiras, use the sandstorm to roll up these Meow Meows. A large amount of sand suddenly appeared around the body of young Kiras, who had just appeared. A large amount of sand filled the air, almost occupying 1/5 of the entire central area, wrapping all the Meow Meows. When Meow Meow was lost, these sandstorms suddenly changed, and a large amount of sand spun up and hit Meow Meow. Although the damage was minimal, it could cause continuous damage to them. Although Meow Meow was wrapped in a large amount of sand, it could still see the position of young Kiras, ran towards young Kiras at a very fast speed, stretched out its sharp claws, and grabbed young Kiras. But unfortunately, it was just the phantom of young Kiras, and the real young Kiras appeared on one side of its body, with a lot of rocks floating around its body. Meow Meow was hit by the flying rocks before he noticed it, and lost his combat ability. This is the effect of young Kira's sand hiding. As long as the sandstorm is turned on, young Kiras will hide in the sandstorm, and it is difficult for the enemy to hit it accurately. At the same time, young Kiras's momentum suddenly surged, and Zhang Rui could feel that its ability was improving in all aspects. If the skills were released again, the power would be indescribable. The effect of the original power, after successful use, there is a chance to improve the elf's all attributes. I'm so lucky. Zhang Rui said excitedly after seeing the changes in young Kiras. With the increase in ability, young Kiras can handle it as long as the opponent's level is not too high. Damn it! There is sand everywhere, and I can't find its location at all. At this time, a member of the skeleton team with blue hair complained, due to the influence of the sandstorm, most of their meows lost their combat ability because of the attack of this young Kiras. Young Kiras became more and more courageous, and his level directly reached level 24. What a terrifying upgrade speed. However, at this moment, the yellow sand in the sky was slowly dissipating, and the figure of young Kiras emerged from it. At this time, young Kiras was surrounded by a large number of meows and it was difficult to escape. Young Kiras. Chapter 60. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Young Kiras stared at the surrounding meows baring their teeth and claws, and sweat seemed to be produced on his originally hard brown skin. Zhang Rui quickly noticed this. After many battles just now, although young Kiras was rarely injured, he used skills many times, which also caused his physical strength to be a little insufficient. Young Kiras, can you fight again? Young Kiras. Hearing young Kiras's firm answer, Zhang Rui nodded and ordered it, power of the earth. Young Kiras controlled the earth elements around him, and many meows only felt that the ground was shaking violently, making it difficult for them to stand firm. At this moment, the flat surface suddenly cracked, and a large number of cracks extended to the surroundings. Waves of fluctuations were generated from the cracks and all hit the meows. Suddenly, all the meows were attacked and flew out. The power of the earth is an all-round attack skill. As long as you are not flying in the sky, you can't avoid the attack of the power of the earth. Seeing many meows lose their ability to fight, the level of young Kiras was raised to level 26 again, and his strength was improved again. At the same time, under the protection of the Kabutosaurus, Yi Fei had already come to the front of the instrument on the cool leopard. Looking at the huge instrument in front of him, Yi Fei was a little dazed. How can such a large instrument be destroyed? At this moment, the cat boss in the distance pounced on Yi Fei. When its sharp claws were about to touch Yi Fei, a dragon-shaped phantom suddenly rushed out from a distance, directly knocking the cat boss out and hitting the instrument in the distance. The instrument was not damaged at all by the powerful impact force. Yi Fei couldn't help but exclaimed, "What is this instrument made of? Why is it so hard? We are made of alloy. It is impossible to break it." This voice was spoken by the researchers standing in front of the instrument. At this time, their eyes were looking at the ultimate cave in the sky, and their eyes were full of excitement. I have been studying for so many years just to wait for this day. The researcher said excitedly. Guzma ignored the battle at this time, and his eyes were still fixed on the ultimate cave. He raised his mouth slightly and said, "It's about time." The handsome guy had taken all the photos at this time, a total of hundreds of photos. As long as they were taken out, they would be enough to convict the members of the Skull team. The handsome guy walked to Guzma with a proud face. "You are the boss of the Skull team. I have taken photos of all the processes of you summoning the ultimate cave. Now you just need to close the ultimate cave, and our Elf Alliance can still give you a lighter sentence. Otherwise." "Otherwise what? Do you have the ability to convict me? Just with the broken camera in your hand?" Guzma laughed at the handsome guy. He was too lazy to pay attention to such an ignorant detective. "I have all the evidence in my hand now, just wait to be wanted by the Alliance." "Really?" Guzma looked at the detective in front of him and smiled mysteriously. At this moment, a sharp blade emerged from the ultimate cave and attacked the handsome guy at a high speed. Seeing this, the handsome guy hurriedly blocked the camera in his hand in front of his chest. Bang! The camera could not withstand the strong force at all and was directly shattered by the sharp blade. "My camera!" The handsome guy hurriedly picked up the fragments on the ground, his face full of shock. How can you convict me now? Your evidence has been destroyed. Now it's our turn for the Skull team to perform. Show up. Paper sword. Guzma lowered his head and glanced at the handsome guy kneeling on the ground. The corner of his mouth drew an arc, and he ignored it and shouted to the ultimate cave. Paper sword. Zhang Rui, who was commanding the young Kiras to fight with many Meowth, stared at the ultimate cave in front of him and his face was stunned. Zhang Rui still has some knowledge about the paper sword. The alien beasts living in the other world have two attributes, grass and steel. In other words, except for the fire attribute, the damage to it is negligible. Moreover, Zhang Rui especially remembers that the physical attack of the paper sword is extremely strong. It can almost kill the elves with weak defense in one move. At this moment, Zhang Rui must protect Yifei from being hurt by Meow Meow and Cat Boss. He can't get away to stop Guzma from using the paper sword, so he shouted to the handsome guy in the distance, "Aren't you a detective of the Elf Alliance? Are you going to watch the plan of the skeleton team succeed?" Obviously, the handsome guy heard Zhang Rui's voice. Yes, his purpose this time is to collect evidence of the skeleton team's crime on the one hand, and to stop the skeleton team's plan on the other hand. Thinking of this, the handsome guy stood up. He got up, took out the pokeball on his body, and threw it out. Go! Poison Skull Frog. With the flashing of blue light, a Pokémon that looked like Greninja appeared in front of the handsome guy. It had a red poison sac that shrank and expanded with its breathing. Name, Poison Frog. Attribute, Poison/Fighting. Level, LV51. Quality, A+. Gender, Male. Status, Healthy. Features, Poison Hand. Carrying items, Poison Gem. Inherited moves, Acupuncture, Cross Chop, Absorbing Punch, Bullet Punch. Basic skills, Sludge Bomb, Poison Blast, Trick, Venom Shock, Assault, Mud Bomb, Surprise Blast. Provocation, Taught skills, Ice Fist, Kick, Lightning Fist. Skill secrets, Hold, Shadow Ball. Zhang Rui took advantage of the time when the young Kiras was fighting Meowth to turn his head to look in the direction of the handsome guy. After seeing the poison frog, he immediately used the data eye to detect. Unexpectedly, the qualifications of this poison frog were a little poor, but the rest were all top-notch. In addition to the skills learned, it actually has Pokémon items. It is extremely difficult for ordinary trainers to obtain Pokémon items, except for gems and rock props. Other props have become rare. After all, the craftsmanship of making props has been lost. Now the props on the market are worth at least 1 million, however, Zhang Rui does not have to worry about having no place to get props. Who lets him have the copy system? As long as he goes to the copy store, he can buy the corresponding props. Seeing such a high-level poisonous skull frog, Zhang Rui felt that the handsome guy could definitely stop Guzma's plan, so he ignored it and concentrated on dealing with the Meow in front of him. I don't know why. After the Meows of these skeleton teams were defeated, they actually summoned another Meow. Could it be that all the elves of these people are Meows? At this time, Yifei was already ordering the cool leopard to attack the instrument in front of him. With the repeated attacks of the cool leopard, the instrument in front of him was intact, just like a new one. Damn it! This alloy is too hard and can't be destroyed at all.